Hello! On the agenda today is the forecast for the next lunar month, which will begin with the new moon on the 14th of July 2026. Let's see what's interesting in the chart of this new moon. Here is how it looks. The luminary is in the 22nd degree of Cancer and is moving towards Jupiter. At first glance, this is a very favorable conjunction, a favorable sign, but we see that Pluto is in opposition to Jupiter. Therefore, according to my calculations, between the 14th and 22nd of July, there will be manifestations in the form of emergencies or incidents on the projections of Pluto and even Jupiter. Nevertheless, the luminary does not have any obvious tense aspects. This means the background for the next new moon is generally moderately favorable. The conjunctions, which also seem to be very threatening, like the Mars-Uranus conjunction, are actually separating. The peak harm from this conjunction is already behind us. Nevertheless, the projections of Mars and Uranus will naturally attract attention on astrogeographical maps. The next important observation is that the generally favorable planets Jupiter and Venus unfortunately have tense aspects. Jupiter has a tense aspect to Pluto and Venus has tense aspects to both Uranus and Mars. Moreover, Venus is in the sign of its weakness, Virgo, so the projections of Venus will be conditionally favorable. The projections of Pluto this month deserve special attention. This is because Jupiter is in opposition to Pluto and is stressing these energies. Moreover, the Sun will also be in opposition to Pluto during the month, around the 26th to 28th of July. I would also like to draw your attention to the declinations of the planets. And in these declinations, the most interesting behavior is observed in Mars. Notice here we have Mars, here is its movement, and we see that around the 30th of July, Mars enters into an exact contraparallel with Pluto. For those who are not aware, I remind you that a contraparallel means they will be at equal distances from the equator, Pluto and Mars, but in opposite celestial hemispheres in the southern and northern, and thus Mars from approximately the 30th of July and throughout August and even part of September will be in this exact contraparallel with Pluto, which means the projections of Mars and Pluto. Thus, the projections of Mars and Pluto until the end of August look quite tense. Attention should also be paid to any aspects in longitude between Mars and Pluto. They will manifest more brightly than usual. Moreover, in this lunar month, since the luminary conjunction is in the sign of Cancer, the likelihood of exacerbation of chronic diseases in the chest and stomach area increases. The astrological remedy is beneficial contact with the elements of fire and earth. This means an active lifestyle, contact with nature. There are risks of poisoning from alcohol, from the element of water. Attention to those who cannot swim or are in unfamiliar places, especially in windy weather around the 26th to 28th of July. The emergency forecast indicates the likelihood of similar events related to the elements of air and fire, primarily earthquakes, volcanoes, military and criminal activity, terrorist attacks, road accidents, industrial accidents, and aviation incidents. In the regional projections of the luminaries of Neptune, there may also be floods. With the involvement of Pluto, Saturn, and Mars, strong storms, hurricanes, earthquakes, and fires are likely. Let's move on to astrogeographical maps. Europe. I would start with the projection of Pluto, which is particularly tense this month. Emergencies may occur in the area of Kazan, Samara. In the Astrakhan region, near the Caspian Sea, from the side of Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan and Iran, but this does not concern Dagestan, the Chechen Republic and Azerbaijan, as here the favorable influence of Jupiter is clearly felt, which will have a positive effect on business, people's health and relationships between people. In the Caspian Sea region, as well as in Tatarstan, the likelihood of emergencies rises around the 14th to the 22nd of July. The projection of the luminaries is moderately favorable for us, but nevertheless risks remain in the Crimea region in the new territories of Russia, on the shore of the Sea of Azov. The projection of Saturn passes near Murmansk, touches the Leningrad region, the Smolensk region, and passes directly through Kiev and quite precisely through the capital of Moldova, Chisinau. The next lunar month looks tense for Ukraine. For Moldova, since Istanbul is not the capital of Turkey at this time, for Turkey, some local problems are likely. Some events may occur that will have an unfavorable impact on holidays in Turkey, in this eastern region of Turkey, and on the Greek islands adjacent to Turkey. The projection of Saturn may also indicate extreme heat or strong winds, the likelihood of fires. Saturn is in the fiery sign of Aries. This should not be forgotten. The projection of Neptune is usually neutral. And finally, in Western Europe, Mars and Uranus will create some tension. Mars mostly passes through Ireland. For this country, the next lunar month looks tense. And also for Portugal. For Portugal, this forecast may be particularly relevant because Mars passes directly through the capital, Lisbon. The likelihood of fires, conflicts. In the Canary Islands region, Venus and Uranus will create a mixed influence. Overall favorable, but those on the most western islands of Asia should beware of bad weather. The projection of Pluto passes by, only touching the group of Kuril Islands. Here too there are tense projections of Mars and Uranus. Also the luminary connects in the Kamchatka region. This traditionally seismic region will be under strong tension next month. It is highly likely that noticeable seismic activity and earthquakes will occur on both the Aleutian and Kuril Islands. The projection of Mars and Uranus touches Nepal, Tibet, Bangladesh, the central part of China. Mars passes through the capital of Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar. For this country, the next month also looks tense. The entire region around Baikal, the Irkutsk region, Ulan-Ude, Buryatia is under tension. The likelihood of fires and emergencies is increased. Risks with aeroplanes and transport in general. The projection of Saturn will clearly add tension for China as it passes directly through Beijing. For China, the next month looks very tense. Besides Uranus and Mars, we also see the projection of Saturn through the capital. There may be some incidents with Chinese means of transport. Natural disasters are also possible. We see a weak projection of Venus this month, but it passes between Omsk and Tomsk and near Almaty. This is a good sign for Kazakhstan in general, especially for eastern Kazakhstan. It passes through the capital of India, Delhi. It passes through the island of Sri Lanka. The next month looks favorable for India. This is obvious. Traveling, business with this country in the next lunar month also looks successful. Africa. I'll start with the West, where the influence of Uranus and Mars is strong. The projection of Venus will somewhat weaken it in the region of Liberia. But overall, the next month is unfavorable for West Africa. The projection of Saturn passes through Egypt. Holidays in the next lunar month there may be associated with some inconveniences, most likely due to the weather being too hot. The projection of the luminaries, though weakly tense, passes through a hot spot. This is Syria, Lebanon, Israel. It touches part of the Red Sea. Still, in the next lunar month, it is unsettled here. I would pay attention to the projection of Pluto, which creates tension in the Persian Gulf, affecting the capital of Iran and the capital of Qatar, Doha. For Saudi Arabia, there are more positives as Jupiter passes through Riyadh, the capital of this country, and there are some tensions at the exit of the Red Sea. We see luck for Somalia, which is quite rare. One can talk about an increased likelihood of piracy in this area in the next lunar month. North America. It should be noted immediately that the capital of the USA is affected by the unfavorable influence of the luminaries. There is also a tense influence from Mars and Uranus in seismic and fire-prone areas in the western United States, in California, Portland, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas. The likelihood of fires and earthquakes here increases. The area of Alaska is marked as tense. One can talk about the likelihood of seismic activity in the Aleutian Islands, and it should be noted the increased tension in the Hawaiian Islands. Favorable projections of Jupiter and Venus this month on North America will have minimal impact. It can be noted that the favorable projection of Venus passes through the capital of Mexico, Mexico City, meaning the next lunar month is generally favorable for this country. South America. Here, attention can be drawn to the tension in the south of this continent. Shipping in this area, as well as around the Falkland Islands, looks dangerous. Storms are likely. A weekly tense projection of the luminaries passes very precisely through the capital of Brazil. The next month looks tense for this country. The favorable projection of Jupiter will not help, as nearby is the same very tense Pluto next month. This should be noted by those holidaying or living in these areas. The region of Australia. Here I note the projection of Saturn, which affects the capital of Malaysia. The island of Borneo is under tension. The island of Bali will also be under tension. Overall, this region of Southeast Asia does not look very good in the next lunar month. There may be weather deviations, storms, heavy rains, for example, or intense heat. The projection of Pluto affects the capital of Papua New Guinea. And one can also note the strong projection of Mars, which affects New Zealand. The likelihood of fires and volcanic activity in the next lunar month. That's all from me. I wish you a good summer holiday. Be careful on the water from the 26th to the 28th of July. All the best. Goodbye.